Hey everybody, Sam here from Sugar Spun Run, and today I'll be showing you how to make the worst chocolate chip cookies. That's right, you heard it correctly. These chocolate chip cookies are the worst. If you want the full story on how they got their name, you're going to have to check out my blog post, but the gist of it is that they are going to ruin every other chocolate chip cookie out there for you. These cookies are absolutely addictive, and I have hundreds of 5-star reviews on the original recipe that all agree on the same thing. These cookies really are the worst. To begin, you are going to need 1 cup or 2 sticks of unsalted butter, and you're going to want to melt this. Now, here's where a lot of people go wrong. Once you melt your butter, it is so important that you let it cool. Usually in the microwave, your butter will get really hot, and if you add your other ingredients right away, what you'll actually do is you'll melt your sugar and you're going to have a greasy cookie dough that is never going to form nice, soft cookies. They're going to spread way too much in the oven. So what I like to do is I'll microwave my butter and then I let it cool for at least 5 minutes, but usually it may need even a little bit longer. If you take a look at what I have here, this butter has actually even started to re-solidify a little bit. That will work fine, but yours doesn't have to be quite at this point. You just don't want it to be hot to the touch. Now that it's cooled, we can add our sugar. You're going to need 1.5 cups of tightly packed light brown sugar. We'll also add 1/2 cup of granulated sugar. You'll stir your butter and sugars together until they're well combined. Next, we'll add 2 large eggs, and you want these to be at room temperature because we're adding them to melted butter. You don't want them to be cold or it'll shock your butter. It's going to make your ingredients not combine as nicely as we want them to, so room temperature eggs are the way to go. Now, if you don't have room temperature eggs on hand and they're all cold in the refrigerator, a quick and easy way to bring them up to room temperature is to just put them in a bowl of warm water and let them sit there for about 15 minutes and they'll be at room temperature before you know it. Next comes our secret ingredient for these worst ever chocolate chip cookies, and that is a 1/4 cup of maple syrup. Now, if you're worried that this is going to make your chocolate chip cookies taste like pancakes, don't freak out. None of my taste testers could tell that I added maple syrup to the cookie dough. Now, it's still important. What this does is it is going to add a great flavor enhancement to your cookies. It's just a secret ingredient that really brings out the flavor. Don't skip this. And I want to note that you can use either pure maple syrup or that fake store-bought pancake syrup. Honestly, most of the time I use pancake syrup because it's less expensive, but either one will work just fine in this recipe. It's been tested both ways. We'll scrape that out because we want to get every drop of that we can. And we'll also add a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and then we'll stir everything together. Now we are going to need a separate bowl for our dry ingredients. This recipe uses 3¼ cup of all-purpose flour. Now, the flour is another place where people can go wrong when making these cookies. If you scoop your flour into your measuring cup, you can end up really packing that in and end up with more flour than the recipe calls for, and you're going to end up with thick, cakey cookies. Likewise, if you don't put enough flour in your measuring cup, you're going to end up with cookies that spread too much and come out flat. You don't want that either. My recommendation is honestly to use a scale, and I have included weight measurements for all of my ingredients in the printable recipe if you want to check those out. I'll also link to the scale I use. It's really inexpensive, under 15 bucks, and it has just completely changed the way that I bake in my kitchen. So once you have your flour measured, we are going to add another key ingredient, and that is 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. This ingredient is critical for giving you soft, chewy cookies that aren't cakey, but that don't spread in the oven. Don't leave it out. We'll also add a teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of baking soda, and a teaspoon of salt. And then we'll stir these together until they're really well combined. Now that you've combined your dry ingredients, we're going to add these to our wet ingredients. I recommend adding the dry ingredients gradually. I'll usually add it in about 4 or 5 parts, and you'll stir everything until it's nicely combined. Now comes the most important part of these chocolate chip cookies, and that is the chocolate chips. You will need 2 full cups of chocolate chips for this recipe, and I like to mix things up a little bit by using a 1/2 cup of mini chocolate chips. Now for the remaining 1.5 cups, I like to use just standard semi-sweet chocolate chips. And what I'm going to do is I'll reserve about 1/4 to 1/3 cup of this for after the cookies are finished baking. We're going to press them on top. It's going to make them look nice and just a little extra pretty. I like to do this, but you can skip it if you want. Now comes the worst part of these chocolate chip cookies, and no, we are not going to be adding nails or scorpions or anything. We are going to have to chill our cookie dough. You're going to want to cover this with cling wrap, and the dough is going to need to chill for at least 30 minutes. Once your cookie dough has finished chilling, you're going to want to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we can begin scooping our cookie dough. I like to make these cookies pretty big, so I'll scoop mine to be about 2 to 2.5 tablespoons in size. We are going to gently roll them between our hands, and what we want them to look like is almost egg-shaped. You don't want to roll a perfectly round ball. You want them to be slightly taller than they are wide. As you probably noticed, I like to line my cookie sheet with parchment paper. It makes the cleanup really easy. If you don't have parchment paper, you'll just bake these directly on an ungreased cookie sheet. And you'll want to space these cookies about 2 inches apart. They are going to spread quite a bit. You'll want to bake your chocolate chip cookies in your 350 degree Fahrenheit preheated oven for about 13 minutes. Keep in mind that if you make your cookies smaller than I did, they are going to need less time to bake. Another few notes I want to add is do not place your cookie dough on a warm cookie sheet. Make sure you always let your cookie sheets cool completely to room temperature before adding any more cookie dough. And while you're not rolling out your cookie dough, keep it in the fridge. That way it doesn't get too warm and the dough doesn't get too sticky and difficult to roll. Once your chocolate chip cookies have finished baking, they should be lightly golden brown around the edges. Now, here's the trick I told you about and the reason we saved some of those chocolate chips from earlier. One thing I like to do is while the cookies are still warm, like 1 to 2 minutes after them coming out of the oven, I will gently press additional chocolate chips onto the tops of the cookies, just gently nestling them into the surfaces. As you can see, it just makes them look a little extra pretty. This isn't completely necessary. You can skip this if you want. It's just a nice finishing touch that I like to do. Now these cookies are still going to be slightly underdone in the centers, so you're going to let them cool completely on the baking sheet. This is going to let them finish baking all the way through. Besides, they're going to be really fragile at this point, so you don't want to move them anyway. And then once they're finished cooling, they'll be baked all the way through, but they'll also be really soft and chewy. And that is how you make the worst ever chocolate chip cookies. This is a recipe you have to try, and when you do, please let me know how you like it and if it ruins your life or not. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.